Welcome back to the 411 Podcasting Network. I am your host, Larry Csonka, and this is episode 24 of the 411 on Wrestling podcast. You can follow us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, and of course the 411mania.com website. Please make sure to subscribe and share us around, and if you have time, leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Today I would like to introduce my co-host. He's a former cardio freak. He's likely watched Golden Gloves boxing. He's definitely watched NFL football. He knew Kurt Angle needed to retire at WrestleMania. And I'd like to call him 411's favorite son, Jeremy Lambert Jr. III. Jeremy, how are you?
A cardio freak reference. That's a column I have not heard in a long time. And everybody listening to this has no idea what you're talking about.
Had to go old school.
I appreciate the callback to, I think, my first big column on 411 after I got done reviewing the series of Tough. Then you turned me into a news column writer, and that's what I called the news column.
That's right. It was good times many, many moons ago, but yes. So, Jeremy, how are you doing?
Larry, I would like to thank WWE for all the entertainment they have provided us over the years. They've pretty much allowed us to write about wrestling for a living. Without WWE, we would not be doing the jobs we currently do. They've been very great to both of us for many years now. With all that said, let's bury the fuck out of this company.
Yeah, after we praise TakeOver, of course. But yes, that's... And if you don't know what Jeremy's referring to, if you haven't listened to the Jon Moxley interview on Talk is Jericho, we're going to talk about that. It's a pretty much must-listen-to interview. You really need to take a listen. Take the time out. It's about 90 minutes. It's if you want to hear everything that went wrong and you want to hear confirmation of pretty much every bad story you've ever heard about Vince and Creative, this is the show for you. So we will be talking about that. But yeah, I'm having a pretty good week so far. I started therapy on Tuesday with the prosthetic leg. I was rather exhausted when I was done, but had a good day. Therapist thought I did well, so I can't complain too much.
It's good. I'm glad things are going well with the leg. I saw you tweeting about that you were starting therapy the other day, so I'm glad the first session went well, and it'll get there. It's always a work in progress. I still can't walk very well.
It's funny because you don't think about it when you get up just to get up and walk. And with this, it's like, it's a big thought process. I constantly have to think about like tons of little things and like hip alignment and shit like that, so I don't get into bad habits and cause like hip issues and back issues and all kind of shit, because God knows I don't need any more problems after the beginning of this year. So, but yeah, went well. Got a bunch of appointments scheduled here heading into June, and I will be, hopefully I'll go through about 12 of those, and once those are over, I will hopefully be walking as normal as I can with the new leg. And yeah, it's a pretty exciting times, a lot of work ahead. I was definitely tired when I was done, I will tell you that.
Well, I'm glad you're here to do this podcast now, and the cardio will improve. I promise you. I don't have good cardio, and every time I just do a little bit of cardio, it gets better and better. So that'll improve. Everything will come along. I imagine, like, I haven't gone through this, obviously. I imagine it's not as simple as just riding a bike like they say it is. It sounds like you actually have to think about walking, and that sounds like a pain in the ass. But you're a tougher man than I. You've always been a tougher man than I, and this is further confirmation.
Yeah, I do what I can. It's just what's weird is like, the prosthetic I have is called like a hydraulic hinge. So like when I walk, I actually have to think about kind of like kicking my foot out so that when I plant it, it locks straight and all that shit. So it's little things like that, and trying to make sure I'm walking like upright and good body alignment and all that shit. But yeah, it went well. It's kind of neat. Like, when you go to an amusement park and they have like the little gate gimmick you go through and like it intertwines like a maze. They have like a bunch of parallel bars like that, and you just walk through it. And I think I tracked like 200 steps on Tuesday, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're kind of learning all that shit, it is. So, but yeah, it went good, and I'm excited to try to get walking again. So
You
that's
gotta be better by, I think it's the end of November, so we can hit up WrestleCon together.
there we go. Sounds like a plan to
That's the
me.
goal.
Well, then I will do my best. So we got
All right.
some preview and review stuff to do today. We are going to start out with NXT Takeover 25. It's not NXT Takeover Bridgeport because Bridgeport's not an important town and doesn't sound cool enough. And you know that's how WWE
NXT
looks at things.
Takeover Connecticut.
Yeah. NXT Takeover Home Base. So we'll start off, Jeremy. Matthew Riddle versus Roderick Strong.
Yeah, banger right off the gate. Riddle, as I said prior to the Velveteen Dream match, like I thought that was going to be his coming out party, and it most certainly was. He was kind of heelish in that match, and then now he's kind of back to just being bro Matt Riddle, which is 100% fine with me because bro Matt Riddle is the best character ever. He's got beef with Undisputed Era through kind of Adam Cole. I figure they're kind of setting up Riddle and Cole down the line, and Strong is sort of not toiling with Undisputed Era, but looking to reprove himself and reprove his brand to the group. And now he gets a chance against Matt Riddle. Like this match is gonna rule. It's that simple. This match is going to fucking rule.
Yeah, I love Matt Riddle, and I'm thrilled that we're getting a Roderick Strong singles match on a takeover because it feels like fucking eons since we've had one. I mean, he's honestly great as a tag team guy. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, Roddy in a singles match just feels like a real treat because we haven't had it in so long. He's had some really good TV matches and even great TV matches as a single from time to time, but getting in that takeover vibe with Riddle, who delivered big last time. This would obviously be banger potential and a big success. I thought even before the rumor came out that Riddle would win, and the rumor is that he's going to be set as the NXT title challenger in August over SummerSlam weekend. So if that is the case, it would make the most sense for Riddle to win here. But yes, this should fucking rule.
Yeah, Riddle winning makes the most sense, whether he's set as a title challenger or not. I mean, I guess that's further confirmation of it. But he just lost the Velveteen Dream. You don't want to beat this guy on back-to-back pay-per-views, and Strong is fine taking a loss here because it is a singles match and he's been kind of a tag team guy, and it furthers the story of maybe this guy isn't Undisputed Era material. So, yeah, Riddle winning certainly makes the most sense here.
And that is the thing, too, because if the night kind of goes how I think it might, if Roddy ends up being the one that loses and the others win, you can easily renew that tease they did with him splitting from the group. So, yeah, you have a lot of avenues to go from this, not only setting up a title challenger, but possibly dissension in the Undisputed Era. So we move on. Fatal 4-way ladder match for the vacant NXT Tag Team titles. The Street Profits versus Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus the Forgotten Sons versus Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Before I kind of get into the match, the one thing I do want to say is I think NXT generally handles things really well, and I think that they generally do title changes and everything at the right time. But I kind of worry that they might have taken a mistake and a misstep when they had the War Raiders on the way out, and that second time the Street Profits challenged them, and the crowd, they wanted those guys to win so bad. And I kind of don't understand why you couldn't have done like a 3-way or a 4-way on TV and done the title change. And then if you do that, I mean, you could have done that without the Viking Raiders experience, War Machine losing, and then you could have still booked a tag title match for TakeOver if you wanted to. So hopefully they didn't miss the mark there. This definitely has a lot of potential to deliver because you're going to have all the smoke and mirrors of a ladder match. Street Profits are looking to impress. They've gotten really good over the last year through working in Evolve. They're over. Crowd loves them. And definitely one of the favorites. Lorcan and Burch are great. They always deliver and can adapt to any environment. The Forgotten Sons are fine, but they're finally getting a big chance on a takeover. So while they may not be the best team out of the four, I do think they will work really hard. And obviously, O'Reilly and Fish are one of the best tag teams in the world, and they never disappoint on a takeover. So if I'm guessing here, it's either the Street Profits or Undisputed Era. I'm leaning towards Undisputed Era here because I think it might be a big night for the group.
I agree with you on the Ward Viking Experience Raiders. I don't know what they're calling themselves anymore. They haven't even been on television in like a month. What a situation that was. And that is no knock on NXT. It was, I think at this point, very obvious that these guys weren't scheduled to be called up. There was no plans for them to be called up. Like if they were supposed to be called up, they would have dropped the tag titles to somebody else at that takeover where they beat Aleister Black and Ricochet. And obviously Aleister Black and Ricochet, they weren't going to drop them because they were called up at that point. But I think they would have done something different. I have faith that Papa Paul would have done something different there. But they were called up out of the blue, and then it was just, all right, what are we going to do with these guys? And it's just, well, let's have them just lay down the titles and take a bow, and that's it. I get what you're saying about Street Profits just going to beat them on that NXT show, and if not them, then throw in the Forgotten Sons and make it a three-way match, and then have Street Profits pin Forgotten Sons, and then War Raiders ride off with however you want to do it. They certainly could have done that. It would have made more sense than just, hey, let's lay down the titles, and now here's kind of 4 leftover teams, and now they're gonna battle for the vacant titles. It is what it is. That I mean, that's how they decided to handle it. Papa Paul can only do so much when Vince wants what he wants. This match should be very good. It's a ladder match. It's Undisputed Era are amazing. I don't know how banged up Bobby Fish is because he did get injured at a live event and then missed a couple live events. So he's reportedly a little bit banged up, but he's going to be in this match. Kyle O'Reilly is awesome. Street Profits, as you said, have gotten better. I've seen some of their Evolve work. They're much better than they were in NXT. They're always super over with their gimmick, and that helps. Lorcan and Birch are almost the forgotten team because I think people forget that they had just a fucking banger with Undisputed Era at TakeOver Chicago last year. And it might have even been, I'm pretty sure it was 2018, but like they had that banger match, and then they kind of went by the wayside because I think Lorcan got hurt. It might have been 2017. I don't know. Somebody can correct me. Lorcan got hurt, and then Birch kind of went away. Lorcan came back, but then he went to 205, and then like they haven't really been a featured tag team. But these guys are fantastic, and they should be in this match, and they're going to probably be great in this match. And then the Forgotten Sons, I don't care for. They're Forgotten Sons for a reason. As long as they don't win, I'll be pretty satisfied.
Yeah, they feel like such a WCW Saturday Night team to me. And just like, yeah, the dudes coming out like in construction outfits and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I do think they will work hard because they're finally getting the takeover chance, and with everybody else involved, hopefully they won't stick out too bad. But yeah, I have pretty decently high hopes for this one because I think there's going to be a lot of stuff, and like Montez Ford is obviously he's going to be the star of the Street Profits, and dude is just amazing, and probably will have a chance to, even if they end up losing, we'll have a chance to shine here.
And it's a ladder match, as you mentioned. You can kind of do the smoke and mirrors with that, so that'll make guys look a little bit better. NXT has a good history of ladder matches, at least under the Shawn Michaels era. So I'm sure the match will be great. On paper, it's not the most, I guess you would say, star power heavy match because only Undisputed Era are like, oh, they've been on TakeOver before. These guys are TakeOver mainstays. Like we know these guys are going to bring it. Lorcan and Birch have done it once, but then disappeared, and that was last year. They've been pretty much persona non grata for a year now. I guess Blake Wesley did it as part of Blake and Murphy, but that was a very long time ago.
Oh,
and the Street Profits.
Yeah, speaking of eons ago.
The Street Profits, I don't think they've ever had a takeover match. So it's, again, the really only Undisputed Era that's kind of your team that you're looking at. All right, this team belongs. These other three, they're kind of unproven commodities, but you got the ladder match aspect of it. And I mean, I don't doubt any takeover matches, honestly. It's foolish to doubt any takeover match.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to when everything has been delivering so much, and it's like that's why I say it's like everybody always like I keep seeing the same thing again. Oh, I'm not feeling the buzz for this takeover, and then when it's over, it's like everybody's gonna be like, man, this was a great show, and it's like the Anderson Silva thing. Like I never picked against Anderson Silva. It's like once he loses, I'll have a reason to pick against him because he destroyed everyone. So once we have a bad takeover show, I will start doubting the show. I may have a problem with booking here and there, but the shows always deliver. So yeah, I think this definitely has a chance to. No, it should be very good. Probably has a chance to be great. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think Undisputed likely wins.
Yes, I don't know if I made a pick. I'm leaning towards Undisputed as well. With Street Profits are right there for me. If you're gonna do it, like now feels like the time to do it. But I think Undisputed Era is kind of the more safe pick in this instance.
Yep. Coming up next, the NXT North American Championship match between your boy, the Velveteen Dream, and the returning Tyler Breeze. You know, now Triple H has talked many times about main roster talents being shifted back to NXT when they do roster shakeups. And it has finally happened with this latest one because you have Alexander Wolf going to NXT UK. Killian Dane has been brought back to NXT. He has been on the Coconut Loop. And now you have Tyler Breeze back on the main TV brand of NXT. I like moves like this because these were guys they weren't doing anything with on the main roster. So if you're not doing anything with them, why not shift them to one of the other brands you have? That's why you have all these brands. You know, and it just makes sense. I like the move of Breeze back to NXT because he was doing both Jack and shit on the main roster. And when he's bounced back down to NXT, he's had really good efforts. He had a great match with Ricochet. And I think that the pairing makes a lot of sense. It allows for a lot of fun character work. Dream routinely has been putting on bangers to TakeOver. And Breeze is going to be more than motivated than ever to prove that he can hang with, you know, as Dream calls him, Dream was jokingly calling him, like, basically he called him Dollar Tree Velveteen Dream. You know, so he wants to hang with, like, the new him. And I just think this has a ton of potential. You know, in theory, it seems like a real easy pick to pick Velveteen Dream to win. And I do think he likely wins. But I do think that they could go with a Breeze win to kind of reestablish him right off the bat. To kind of shake things up. And then if you do that, you can move Velveteen Dream into the NXT title picture. So, which is obviously something he is more than ready for. Especially if Gargano ends up losing. So I could see either guy winning, but I do think Velveteen Dream will win. But again, don't be shocked if Tyler Breeze pulls off the upset.
They should have put Tyler Breeze on SmackDown so Xavier Woods could have the up, down, down crew retain somebody after losing everybody in the Superstar shakeup. But if he didn't get moved to SmackDown, where really the only reason he would have been there was for Xavier Woods' gaming channel, NXT is certainly the best place for him to go. I've always really, really liked Tyler Breeze. He's a hard worker. He's a good worker. He had a gimmick that got over, and it's a very it's a simple gimmick. I mean, he's a millennial essentially. He's just self-absorbed, wanting to take selfies, and it's not the most layered gimmick in the world. So. But he got it over, and then the fashion file stuff, like he got that stuff over. This guy, he's very good at what he does, and now he's back in NXT. As you said, he'll be motivated. I'm sure you saw his tweet where he's like, I didn't get a single top 25 moment in NXT Takeover history, and like I've done all these shows. Like, come on, the man wrestled Liger in NXT. He couldn't make top 25. He'll certainly be motivated. He probably wants to prove some people on the main roster wrong for not using him. I'm really looking forward to this match. The character work, something you mentioned, is what I'm mostly going to pay attention to, because both are very capable wrestlers and accomplished wrestlers. I'm sure the technical aspect of this match will probably be very good, but the character work of both men is what I'm going to be just most looking at, because Velveteen Dream is my favorite character in wrestling right now. The guy, from his entrance to everything, just feels, looks, carries himself like a star. And Tyler Breeze is a very good character. So I'm looking forward to just kind of that interactions more than anything. You've sort of sold me on Breeze winning because he's down in NXT. It seems kind of fresh for him to do that. And Velveteen may have outgrown this North American title, honestly. So I think Breeze picks up the win here.
Yeah, and again, I would not be shocked at all, because it all depends on if they're ready to elevate Velveteen Dream to the main NXT title, and that is very possible. And then, like, depending on what happens, like, the layer underneath for the North American title, I mean, if Breeze is champion, you could have guys like Roderick Strong, Keith Lee, Donovan Dijakovic when he's healthy, and others kind of running in that area. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not out of the question. I'll be curious to see how they do it and how it comes off. But, yeah, definitely excited. I want to see how Breeze does. I hope he delivers big time and kind of gives a big fuck you to the writers that stuck him on main event for, like, the last 8 months. And
the one writer that stuck him on main event for 8 months.
It's good shit, pal. Trust me.
The Breeze thing, he's the victim of what so many people in NXT have been a victim of, is he gets this character over to a cult-like following. He's a really strong mid-card act who could elevate to the main event in NXT. And then Vince sees like the crowd going crazy for this guy. And so he calls him up and he gets like 2 weeks to prove himself, but he's stuck in this shitty feud with Dolph Ziggler, who, Jesus Christ. And then he's dead, like, immediately. And this has happened to just so many people who get themselves over as mid-card acts in NXT, and Vince sees like the small audience goes crazy for him. So he calls them up and then he does nothing with them. He tries to give them just a couple of weeks to say, all right, how are you going to do here? And then the larger crowds don't react on that scale in 2 weeks, because of course they don't, especially with the feuds these guys are given. And then Vince is like, all right, I'm done with you. And that's what happened to Tyler Breeze. So that's why I'm very happy. And it happened to Ty Dillinger as well. Ty Dillinger just, instead of taking the $500,000 per year paycheck, he went to AEW or the independents, and Breeze is like, yeah, I'll take the money and go back to NXT.
Yeah, and I think it's a good move, and I think it's smart, because again, why do you have these brands if you're not going to maximize them as much as possible? I wrote a column probably like 2 years ago now about looking into what basically I titled it WWE relegation, to just the basic term to use, because, and I didn't mean it in a negative aspect though, because it's like, you have NXT, and if you're wanting to make it a viable third brand at some point, which they really keep talking about, and you want to tour more, you're going to need some somewhat bigger names. I'm not asking you to fucking, put Seth Rollins down in NXT. I mean, God, there'd be great matches. But, I mean, I'm not asking for anything like that. But, I mean, if you're not using a Tyler Breeze, you're not using a Killian Dane, you're not using an Alexander Wolf, fucking shift them around. Put them where you can make use of them. Just make sense.
You've got the brands, and more importantly, like, you've got the talent. There's just so much talent just sitting on. I mean, look at EC3. That guy was literally sitting on Monday Night Raw and drinking, and like just another guy, another mid card act that from NXT got called up too quickly. They had nothing for him, and another example right there. You've got so much talent.
I think EC3's problem is that Vince legitimately thinks he's Dixie Carter's nephew.
That might be true, and that should at least get him on TV and like jobbing. I guess he did that to Ambrose, and then Strowman killed them dead. But I mean, that should at least get him on TV as some like comedy character.
He's on TV every week, brother. He's on Main Event. I'm one of like 3 people that watches EC3. It.
You're really the only person I know who like watches that show. They're gonna start using EC3 as basically a character for AEW, since they think he's Dixie Carter's nephew. So they're just gonna be like, oh well, you're the Aunt Dixie failed with that Impact promotion. We're gonna use you as a symbol for AEW now. That might be EC3's best chance to get on TV.
Who the hell knows? I feel bad for that son of a bitch. I don't think he's the greatest worker in the world or anything, but you can't say that
he's not.
The dude doesn't. I mean, the dude has a look. The guy can talk. He's not bad in the ring. You're telling me there is not a mid-card role for him on TV? Come on now. I mean, Jesus Christ. But yeah, that poor son of a bitch.
And he's got the look Vince would typically like. He can certainly talk. Like, why is this guy not in Baron Corbin's position? Granted, Baron Corbin's a fucking main eventer right now, but he's slightly better in the ring than Corbin. Let's be fair to Corbin. He's had some good matches lately. He's slightly better in the ring than Corbin. He's overall a better talker. He's certainly got a much better look. Like, why isn't he in a similar position? But they don't know what they're doing with these people. We'll get into that later.
Who the hell knows, man? Fucking Baron Corbin, Jesus. Anyway, moving on. NXT Women's Championship champion Shayna Baszler defending against Io Shirai. Kairi Sane is off to the main roster. Bianca Belair is currently preoccupied with Mia Yim. So Io is kind of the last woman standing from that fatal four-way match to challenge Shayna. Io is just, she's the best, dude. She's so good. And I really do feel like a run with the title is in her near future here. And would certainly freshen up the division. I know there's a lot of people that seem to be down on Shayna Baszler's title run. There's this narrative that she is somehow bad when she's always had good matches and she's a really strong character. But I do agree that the title run feels a little long in the tooth right now. But I've been saying that for like 3 or 4 fucking takeovers. And she always ends up leaving with the title. So the fuck do I know? The one thing I do know is that back in 2017... these two had a fucking excellent match in Stardom. And this was when Shayna was way less experienced. And, you know, she was just basically working off instinct and following the leader and just trying to do what felt right. And she did a ton of good and showed a ton of potential there. So knowing they have that background to play off of makes me excited for this one. I think this one does have a definite chance to be great. We did find out on NXT tonight that Shayna is going to have her little buddies at ringside, but Candice LeRae told Io that she would have her back on Saturday night, so that's a new wrinkle in that. Part of me thinks that Baszler escapes again, and I keep picking against her, but I think Io pulls off the win. I'm gonna pick against Shayna again, even though I'm fucking wrong every time. I don't care.
I haven't seen NXT from tonight, but I'm all for, if the horsewomen are going to be with Baszler, I'm all for KNC, Casey and Candice to, you said it was just Candice. I would feel like Casey is going to be out there as well since they've been teaming, but we'll see. I'm all for them having Io's back. I don't know who's saying Shayna Baszler is a bad worker or a bad character. They're wrong. She's honestly one of the strongest characters in the entire company. Like, she is what Ronda Rousey should have been the entire time, and what Ronda Rousey finally was in the last month of her run. Like, that's who Shayna Baszler has been throughout her entire NXT title run, and even before that. Like, Baszler's character is fantastic. She's just a badass woman who gives no fucks and is just out there to win titles and break arms and beat the shit out of you, and she does it very, very well. And she has a good match every single time on TakeOver, so I don't know where this notion that she's a bad worker. I do agree with the criticism that this title reign is feeling a little long. I didn't think Belair was the right person to beat her in January. If it happened, I wouldn't have cared because they were pushing Belair fairly well, but I didn't think that was really the right answer there. The Fatal 4-Way certainly seemed like the time you could take the title off of her because you don't have to pin her in that situation, and so that's an easy way to get the title off of anybody you want to try to protect. I prefer if Io just beats her one-on-one. It makes Io's win look stronger. Maybe there's some shenanigans outside and Baszler, I don't want to say gets distracted or gets hit or anything, but she just kind of gets fed up with the antics. You know, it finally backfires on her, essentially. And she's like, Io, you can't beat me one-on-one. So let's ban these fools from ringside, and then I'm just going to beat you fair and square. And that is in a Shayna Baszler character. I'm fantasy booking a Shayna Baszler loss when she's probably going to win.
Yeah.
I think Io. Do what now?
I said I know. Like I said, I keep picking against her, and she keeps proving me wrong, man.
I think this is the time for Io, because if Baszler wins, you can't really do Io again. Kyrie's gone, and Baszler kind of ran her out the territory. Bianca just lost to Mia Yim. I guess you can elevate Mia Yim to that spot, but I feel like Baszler just beat her not too long ago. Casey Catanzaro not quite ready. Candice is ready, but she's also just been treated as Mrs. Gargano instead of her own entity, and that's sort of an issue I have with her character overall. I'd like to see her, and they're doing a better job of sort of establishing her more on her own, but that character isn't there yet. So if Io wins, you can at least get a little bit of mileage out of the Shayna rematch while you kind of elevate the rest of that women's division.
I agree with that. Our main event for the evening, NXT Championship, champion Johnny Gargano rematching Adam Cole. These two are coming off of an amazing match of the year contender at NXT TakeOver New York. And I think the rematch, it feels like it's coming a little too soon, but I won't argue with the rematch coming off of that effort, and especially between two guys that just always deliver a TakeOver. Gargano has always been kind of Mr. Takeover, but was missing that one thing until he finally won the title, which was the big story in New York. He became Triple Crown champion, and there was a lot of speculation that Cole was going to win there, but it ended up being all about Gargano, and you kind of had to tell that story, especially with Ciampa being out and not knowing if and when he's coming back. So they paid off that journey, which was something that people were waiting for. And again, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think that this could be a big night for Undisputed Era. They could possibly win the tag and NXT World title, and kind of have that Evolution / Four Horsemen vibe going with them holding a lot of gold. And I don't know if they can have a match in the same league as the New York match, and that's not because I don't think they're capable. It's just because that match was one of those, whenever I talk about 5-star matches a lot of the time, they tend to feel like a perfect storm. You have great performers, you had the tease of a new champion, you had the tease of Gargano finally winning the title, you had amazing atmosphere, Cole was a great douchebag heel, and everything just worked. Now, I still think it'll probably be really great, and I'm excited for it, because again, these guys always deliver. I think that with the tease of Riddle challenging for the title, and the fact that there was already some stuff with him and Undisputed and Cole previously, that Adam Cole picking up the win makes the most sense, and then you move on to he and Riddle in August.
The atmosphere is what I believe is going to end up holding this match back from topping the New York match. And I don't know if it would have in the first place, but I mean, the New York match, it's WrestleMania weekend, it's New York, it's Gargano Cole, it's the main event of that takeover, and like the whole build up, the whole story, the whole Gargano story, and even the Adam Cole story, like it was just going to be, it was the perfect blend of everything. And the rematch to me is coming a little bit too soon. I understand Adam Cole won the first fall, so the claim is, if it was a one-fall match, I'd be the champion and not you. So I get that. But the atmosphere, like it's Bridgeport, Connecticut. I don't know what these fans are going to be like. And it's not, it's Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's not on a WWE weekend, which it certainly helps the takeover atmosphere. Like you're running WrestleMania weekend, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble. Like those are wrestling weekends where you get hardcore fans traveling to come to the WWE shows and also the NXT shows. Like this is just, or even when they would run prior to Money in the Bank, like they always held Money in the Bank at like Chicago or something. So this is Bridgeport, Connecticut. I just don't know if you're going to get that same kind of atmosphere for this match, which will eventually hurt it. As far as the winner goes, I'm leaning towards Cole, for a couple of reasons. One, Gargano is reportedly banged up, and I'm sure he can work TV still. If he can't work the live events, that sort of hurts because you want your champion working some of those live events. It certainly helps. And the other reason is Gargano, he needed the title win because that was his character arc. His character doesn't actually need the title. And Adam Cole's character certainly thrives off of something like that. And like you said, with the whole Undisputed Era having the gold, and if they're going to tease how Roderick Strong couldn't get it done, then you build that story. The Gargano character, he's Johnny Gargano with or without that title. So I don't really feel like he needs this championship, and that's what makes me lead towards Adam Cole overall.
Yeah, fair enough. So that is NXT TakeOver 25 for this weekend. 411 will obviously have live coverage of the show because I will be doing it this weekend because Kevin is off for a family adventure or something this weekend, I believe. So I'll have live coverage and full review after the show. And it's an NXT TakeOver show, man. You have a lot of talented people on it. It should deliver as always. It kind of just depends, I think, on how great it will be. And like you said, I think the one big difference this time around is going to be that crowd atmosphere because you're not on a big travel weekend, and again, it's Bridgeport. And it's how many?
Yeah, had they gone to San Jose, which was what they were originally going to do before the sweet Saudi money took over, I would have been less worried if they were in San Jose because that is more of a hardcore NXT audience where they've even take television from there.
Well, that in California too is a good place for wrestling with PWG and stuff, and you get all kind of fans that will travel to that in California. So yeah, definitely agree.
Right, but Bridgeport, no one's actually traveling to Bridgeport for NXT, and if you are, God bless you. But that's what scares me about this show is this crowd is just. It's not going to be there. I think the wrestling should be good enough to where if they're wrestling fans, they will get into it. And I mean, they're going to a wrestling event. I assume they're wrestling fans. If you don't like this show, you're not a wrestling fan, as Brandy Rhodes famously said prior to Double or Nothing. I just don't know how they're going to be throughout this entire show, being that it's a Bridgeport crowd.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens, but definitely a strong show on paper, and with NXT's history delivering, we will see what happens. Again, I think it'll be really strong. You spoke about Double or Nothing, which is a good segue into our next segment, as Jon Moxley made his big debut at the end of that show, which we spoke about on the last show. Made the big run-in, took out Jericho, took out the ref, beat down Kenny Omega, signed with the company. Big news, and then he appeared on Talk is Jericho this week. Jeremy, start us off. What did you think of the interview?
This interview was just so fascinating. We talk about all the time on this podcast where matches. I'm always sort of I'm losing my word here, but I'm interested in match times, and you always do a good job of tracking match times in your reviews and stuff. And I'm interested because I like seeing, oh, that match was 15 minutes. It felt like 15 minutes. Oh, that match was 20 minutes. It only felt like 10 minutes. That was a great match. Oh, that match was 10 minutes. It felt like an hour. That always fascinates me. And it's the same thing with this podcast in that this podcast was an hour and 40 minutes, something like that. And it felt like 40 minutes because it just flew by. I wanted so much more. Ambrose and Jericho had a very good – Jericho was very good in this podcast. And I listen to a lot of wrestling podcasts. And there's good interviewers and there's bad interviewers. And Jericho is, for the most part, more good than bad. But sometimes he has to get his shit in this podcast, he just completely laid out for Ambrose and didn't, outside of a couple of anecdotes, he didn't have much to say. And that's how it should have been. This was the Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley podcast. And it was just fascinating from start to finish. There wasn't even Jericho didn't even waste any time getting into it with they do these like 20-minute entrance spiels and whatever, and it's like, okay, let's get to the guest. No, it was like, hey, I'm mad at Jon Moxley because he laid me out, but I'm a journalist. I'm putting that aside. Let's go to this guest. And it's like a 1-minute intro. It's like, great, we are going to get this going right away. This podcast was just fascinating, and we'll talk about some of the finer points of it. But overall, if you haven't listened to it, I'm assuming most have, like, you really have to. Even if you've just read the quotes from every single wrestling website that is transcribed, all the quotes, listen to it for yourself, because the quotes just aren't going to do it justice.
Yeah, Moxley was a hell of a storyteller in this, and I really did like how he started out, though. He's like, before we get into this, he's like, I do want to say that I'm very thankful for my time in WWE. He's like, I went there as a kid. He's like, I kind of grew up there. He's like, they made me a star. I met my wife. I made money, paid off my truck. I got to do a bunch of Make-A-Wish stuff, which, you don't hear about him doing a lot of Make-A-Wish stuff because he's not Roman or Cena. But this is apparently something that meant a lot to him. Yeah, it meant a lot to him.
Yeah, he talked about it. He talked about it later on. It was like, yeah, my character, my character would do this, but then I would do this Make-A-Wish thing, and he flat out said, like, a lot of people will think that stuff is like a joke or whatever, but no, when you go to these hospitals and see these kids and everything, like, it changes you, it touches you, and so that's something you have to think about.
Yeah, and they talked about, he's like, he got to meet his wife through WWE, and he was very grateful, and then he goes, with all that being said, let's bury this fucking company for 2 hours. And he did in the best way possible. I mean, and the thing is, this wasn't boo-hoo me. This wasn't, oh, I wasn't used at all. This was him making valid criticisms for 90 minutes. Just constantly talking about how he would walk in and be handed a script, and it would be filled with, like, you need to go out and cut this promo and talk about this is what you did all afternoon. And it would be stupid shit like him riding a unicycle backwards down a street and eating a pizza with a homeless man. He's like shit I would never do. He's like, a promo filled with big words, like how people don't speak in real life. And he's like, and just shit that, like, my character would never say. He's like, so then I'd have to go to Vince. And I'd talk to Vince. And you always hear people talking about how, if you man up and you talk to Vince and you make your case, it's okay. And he'd go and talk to Vince. And what did Vince tell him most of the time, Jeremy?
He said, that's your character. That's you. That's why the audience loves you. It's good shit, pal. It's not comedy.
Exactly. It's good shit, pal. And it's just like...
You do a better Vince voice than I do.
Yeah. And then, like, Moxley was like, you tell Jericho, he's like, and you know what I'm talking about. He's like, I'd go in there and I'd argue with him and fight about it. But then, like, I'd get that Vince, like, Jedi mind trick. Because everybody, if you ever hear people talk about Vince, you can go in there all pissed off at him and yell at him, and then you have this, like, 20-minute conversation. And then you walk out and you're like, God damn, Vince is a nice guy. He had some really good points. And that's what happened a lot. But, like, he was constantly just talking about the horrible scripts handed to him. And he talks about the time he had to do the horrible segment backstage where he was getting inoculated by his doctor. So, because of all the nasty fans, and was getting, like, rabies shots and stuff like that. And Vince assured him it wasn't comedy and that it was drama. And that he was building him into a heel character. And then he talked about how he hated the Roman stuff where he had to mention the leukemia. He's like, and here I have to go out here and basically shit on my best friend who has leukemia and is home trying to fight it off. He's like, I don't want to do that. He's like, that's shit heat. That's not the right kind of heat. And then he wouldn't even address, like, he wouldn't even say the quote, but apparently there was another promo after that initial one where they wanted him to say something else. And apparently this was, like, way over the line for Deathmatch Jon Moxley. Like, it was too over. He thought they would have lost sponsors because of it. Refused to say it. And it's like, it must be pretty bad if he wouldn't bring it up. But, I mean, just constant stuff like that. And, he talked about he hated being turned into a rodeo clown and a prop comic. And people used to get pissed off at, like, reviewers like myself and Voices of Wrestling when we would say stuff like that and call Dean, like, fucking Carrot Top. Oh, no, he's not doing that. It's like he squirted mustard all over someone, for fuck's sake. It's exactly what he is. But and he hated that stuff. And he talks about how he just, as a kid, he was just such a huge wrestling fan. He was living his dream, and then eventually he just fucking hated it. He hated going to work. He talked about being almost borderline depressed at times, had no motivation to get out of bed, no motivation to work out, didn't want to go to the building. And it's just that's some serious shit, man. When you take someone that loves something like that so much and you make them hate it. And that's kind of funny because people make fun of Sasha Banks and the Revival about shit like that. And Sasha Banks grew up a huge wrestling fan, wanted to be a wrestler. The Revival were huge wrestling fans. All they want to be is tag team specialists. But once they talk about that they care about it and want to be good at it and are insulted by bad character work, all of a sudden they're bad people for wanting releases. But all I see today is Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley was spitting the truth, man. And he got out and he refused the new deal, and he's smart. Well, why are the others not smart? I mean, who's the smart one? I mean, is it the ones that won out because they realized they're being used bad? Or is it like Rusev and Ziggler that fucking bitch and moan all the time on social media that they're not on TV and used like shit, but then just keep taking the money and get treated like shit some more?
First off, you made a great point about, I never thought Moxley was bitter at WWE. And you listen to a lot of these ex-WWE podcasts. I mean, this is drawn a lot of comparisons to the Punk Art of Wrestling podcast for obvious reasons. And you listen to that podcast, and he certainly comes off like he is just mad at everybody. He's just completely bitter. He's just spitting venom because of how he was treated with everything. And he had valid points in his podcast as well, but you could see of all right, this guy is just a bitter WWE guy who he didn't get his main events at WrestleMania, and so now he's mad about it, and that's why he quit and all this stuff. I never got that impression from Moxley. And he even said it. He said, I'm going to try to tell these stories just facts, no real emotion. I'll give my emotional thoughts a little bit afterwards, but as I tell the story, it's going to be just facts. And that's what he did. He just laid out the story without coming across as oh, this guy is mad that this happened to him. I'm sure he was mad at that it happened to him. He was clearly frustrated, but he never said oh, I should have won this title. I should have won that title. I should have done this. This should have happened. It was just, this is the process here. That's what he basically laid out. This is the process in WWE. This was my idea. This is what I want to do. This is what I pitched. And then this is what I was given. This is what they told me. And this is why this is why I left. This is why I got frustrated. This is why I knew I wanted to leave in July 2018, because that's what he said. He said in July 2018, I'm done. I'm out. And he thought maybe he changed his mind once they brought him back at SummerSlam, but then they screwed up that big thing because he apparently pitched a bunch of ideas to return. He wanted to return as a heel. They're like, no, you're Seth Rollins, just back up, you do Shield stuff, and that's it. And he was just more frustrated with that. And then, yeah, you get into, we said it at the time. If you go back to that turn on Seth Rollins on the night that Roman announced he had leukemia, in the moment, was it a very shocking turn that, oh boy, this caught everybody off guard? Yes. Could this been the start of something fantastic for Dean Ambrose, the character of Dean Ambrose? Yes, it could have been really, really good. And I'm sure if Ambrose was allowed to kind of do more of what he wanted to do, even though he may have not been happy that he had to do this turn, had he been given more free reign over this turn, it could have been really fucking good. Instead, it was bad comedy with the gas mask, with the rabies shot, with just every other dumb thing they did with that turn. And I don't blame the guy for wanting to leave. It sounded like he was at his wit's end a year ago, and it didn't get any better for him. So that completely sucks for him. But he's in a better place now, and we're getting a great podcast out of it. As far as the Sasha Banks revival, whoever stuff, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Ambrose has the right mindset, or had the right mindset. And he said it on the podcast. He's like, I'm a professional. They sign my paychecks. I will show up. I will try to fight for what I want. But at the end of the day, it's Vince's company. I am his employee. If this is what he wants from me, this is what I will go and do. And I will just sit at home and count down the days until I can get the fuck out. And that's, I feel like, what the Revival are currently doing. And that's my hang up with Sasha Banks, is that you don't have to go home and just go persona non grata, complain on Twitter, make cryptic posts, whatever you're doing. Reportedly throwing a hissy fit at the hotel. I don't know if that's true, but that's the report. Whatever you're doing, that's not the way to go about it. You can be in you mentioned Rusev, like, he's complaining on Twitter, but Rusev still shows up. Rusev is still going to do what he's going to do. I don't mind the people that complain on Twitter, because 99% of the time I agree with them. Rusev should be used more. The Revival should be used more. Sasha Banks should be used more or better. But at the end of the day, just show up, take whatever they give to you, because they're still going to utilize you in some great capacity. I mean, Ambrose is a different product, but they're still going to use you in some way. And then you're just be done with your contract, because they've shown that they'll freeze these contracts as well. So in theory, you're just adding more time to your own contract if you sit at home and complain. So that's my hang up with Sasha Banks. But I don't have an issue with anybody saying they're unhappy and wanting their release. And I'm sure these guys are pitching all the time. But at the end of the day, if this is what Vince wants, he's wrong to a lot of people, but he's right to himself. And it's his company. So if that's what he wants, go out there, do it. Try to do what you can to get changes, but do it. And then when your contract is up, don't even look at the new contract they offer you, and peace out. That's what Ambrose did, and it's working out pretty well for him.
Yeah, and it's and I think the important thing you brought up is, and it's true, is he didn't sound bitter. He sounded frustrated and disappointed, because he was trying. Disappointed is a good word. Yeah, because he was trying to take horrible situations and make the best out of them. And every time he tried, it seemingly only got worse. Which, again, like I said, led to him feeling basically depression-like symptoms. And, I mean, when you love something so much that you don't even want to get up, you don't want to work out, you don't want to go to work, I mean, shit has to be going really bad for it to devolve into that. And like he said, I never imagined a day where I would feel like that. He's like, there are days when you're tired, and he's like, you don't feel like working out, but you can make yourself go do it. But like when you just have no motivation to improve yourself or motivate yourself to do anything and go to work, there's some shit going wrong there, man. And yeah, it's just, but yeah, he tells some just really great stories. And like towards the end when he was talking about how, you know, they did the whole Shield reunion stuff, and he's like, listen, he's like, I was hoping they wouldn't bury me on the way out. They did the Shield stuff because they released the new DVD, and he goes, and that's fine. He goes, because I fulfilled my contract, and I'll be getting my 2.7 cent residual checks if they sell a DVD in Bolivia, and it's fine. But then conversely, he talks about how they made that whole last night special a big Shield go away for him, and he got a $500 payout, which is basically, that's what you get for showing up. Like anybody that showed up that night, enhancement talent, anybody, you get like $500. And he was one of the main guys on the show. And then he said after that, Vince actually called him and tried to talk him into working the European tour as a final Shield like farewell thing. And he was like, oh, geez, let me think about that. Work one of the most grueling tours of the year when I hate my fucking job? No, thank you. So, but yeah, I mean, if you haven't listened to it yet, you really need to.
The other thing is that really stuck out to me, and it was one line, the line that stuck out to me, and then it was really the theme of this podcast, at least one of the themes, is Ambrose talks about dealing with the writers and what Vince has written with the whole pooper scooper and all this other bullshit that he was being given. And Ambrose basically said, I'm a wrestler. If you want me to read your lines, get an actor, because they'll do it much better. And I think that's just such a huge problem in WWE now, and has been a huge problem for a long time, is these scripted promos where, everybody talks about the Attitude Era and what was great about that. Like, the Attitude Era in terms of in-ring couldn't match what WWE could do today. Not what they're do on most occasions, but what they could do if they wanted to. But the stories and the characters were so much better in the Attitude Era, largely. And I mean, they had stars, and they had stars because there wasn't written promos. There wasn't. Wrestlers are creative people. You don't go into wrestling and you're not given. You have an idea. You have a character in mind for yourself. You know what your strengths are. And yeah, you're trained, you're coached, whatever, but you know yourself, you know your character, you know that motivation. And these guys are very creative when they get into this business. Like, they're just physical creative writers. I'm going to copyright that because that sounds like a term Vince McMahon would love to use. And they're given like these Hollywood TV script writers of, actors, they're creative to an extent, but like, this is what they do. They memorize lines. Wrestlers, they just have more creativity in them. And these guys just want to go out there and just be themselves turned up to 11, like an Austin, like a Rock, like a Foley, like a Shawn Michaels, like that, like an Undertaker. That's one era of 5 stars that they don't even have 1 star today. That's why they bring back the Undertaker and Goldberg, and they pay Shawn Michaels and Brock Lesnar and all this money to come out of retirement and stick around and whatnot. Yeah, like, Ambrose is a creative guy, and they've got so many creative guys, and instead of just bullet point them, let them kind of do their own thing, get their own material over, it's no, memorize this script line for line.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is on Twitter, I saw Jeff Hawkins, Shake Them Ropes, was talking about how he's done like acting and comedy, and he has friends in the TV industry, and he knew a guy that was on the creative team, and apparently this dude had like TV writing credits and stuff, and he went in and got hired, and Vince, like, first day told him, now I'm going to teach you how to write some real TV.
And that's what it comes down to. Is even Ambrose said, like, I don't blame the writers most of the time. He did say, like, okay, if you wrote that Roman Reigns line, then fuck you. But for the most part, like, he never blamed the writers, because he knows who these guys are writing for. He knows, it's an audience of what Ty Dillinger said the same thing. Sean Spears in AEW. I worked for an audience of 1. And now I'm working for the actual audience. And that's what it is. Like, everybody there, the wrestlers, you're wrestling for an audience of 1. The writers, you're writing for an audience of 1. And that's who you have to appease. That's who you have to create for. And that guy is a 76, 77, however fucking old he is. Like, he is a very old man who... I mean, he's been in the wrestling business for 40, 50 years now. He's taken chair shots to the head. I can't imagine the road will own you as well. I can't imagine he has too many good brain cells left.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. It's just it just confirmed to me after listening to that what a lot of us have talked about for years. I won't say just me, but so many people have said it. Just Vince just feels so out of touch with what the audience wants and needs. And just listening to Moxley break down all this stuff, it was depressing and disappointing and sad. And credit to him for not just being a bitter asshole, because you couldn't blame him, honestly, in a lot of ways. He got made a star. He met his wife. He got pushed rather well most of the time. The Shield was a big deal, but at the end of the day, like you said, I just wasn't fulfilled, and I wasn't loving something I loved. And when you lose that love of something like that, it can be hard to get it back, but this dude sounds just fucking fired up and ready to go and excited for everything. And that is really good because it's, there was a point where Dean Ambrose, despite the fact that we all knew Roman was the one being pegged as a star, it really felt like Dean had like the biggest star potential at one point until they made him into a prop comic and rodeo clown. He had a little mix of Brian Pillman, a little Roddy Piper in there, and it was good, and it fit, and it was different from everybody else on the roster. And like the biggest mistake you can make in front of Vince McMahon is showing him you can do comedy. Unless you're
comedy, pal. It's just you.
Yeah. Unless you're like R-Truth, who is working into his fucking 50s and still looks great and is getting paid. More love to Ron Truth, dude, no doubt. But it's like for other people though, it's like the worst thing in the world, and that really crushed a lot of what he could have been.
Ambrose was, I don't want to say killed, because I think he won the title after this and he rebounded fairly well. Yeah, he was clearly the afterthought in the Shield breakup because Rollins was aligned with the Authority. Roman was the guy they wanted to push. Ambrose was just kind of there. He got himself over, and he sold merchandise, as he said, so that made him look better for the company. He didn't talk about the Brock Lesnar match. I don't know if he didn't want to talk about the Brock Lesnar match. I don't know if he'll talk about it in the future. Like, that's the story that I want to hear. And I don't even know if there's a story, but we all remember that feud, that angle. It looked like this is the match where Dean Ambrose is probably going to lose to Brock Lesnar, but it's going to just be, he's going to have that never say die attitude. He's just going to come at him like this is the first like sign of lunatic Ambrose, and Lesnar doesn't know what to do. And instead it was just this extended squash, and that was that. And then Ambrose, it took him a while to really bounce back from that, and he did, but then he just kind of, even as champion, just kind of fluctuated and whatnot, and then he got hurt, and his whole 2018 and leading into this year. But and this is where like he didn't come off bitter, because he really could have been like, yeah, fuck Brock Lesnar, fuck the way he wanted to do business there, fuck how that match was booked. Like, he took one shot at Brock of like, but it was really more a shot of Vince of, he's a millionaire, and then he pays Brock billions of dollars to ruin his company. That was the one shot he sort of took at Brock, but was more a Vince shot. Like, I admired how he handled the whole conversation. And like you said, he sounded, in telling these stories, relieved that he could just get it all out there, and relieved that it could be out there, and relieved that he's just in a much better situation for himself right now.
Yeah, I kind of imagine the Brock match, the meeting for that, going with Dean like, all right, here's what I'm thinking. I'm the lunatic fringe. You've never faced anybody like me. I'm going to run wild. I'm going to use some weapons. I'm going to take the fight to you like nobody else. And then we're to go into this. I'll hit dirty deeds. You can kick out. And he has a whole plan. And Brock looks at him and goes, Suplex City, ground and pound, F5. We're out, brother.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The other big reveal to me was, and everybody talked about the Jon Moxley debut video that broke on Twitter while he was at Cauliflower Alley, and that was his big reintroduction to the independent scene, was that Sick Nick Mondo of Deathmatch fame is a filmmaker in LA now, and is the man who did that and his New Japan video.
We talked about this when... Oh, go ahead.
Which is just... that's what you don't expect hearing, like a Sick Nick Mondo drop in 2019 and it not having to do with death matches. It's like, I was like, well, that's kind of really cool. It's all, I always like to hear when, people have decided to leave wrestling and they find something else that they're really good at, and apparently he's doing really good at it, and that was his whole, he called him up because, basically Moxley tells the story is he had the idea for this video back in like January, and then he was wanting to shoot it in February, but all the people he knew that were really good at it were in WWE, and he couldn't obviously have them do it because it would like ruin the secret and everything. So he called Mondo, who had done basically a documentary on himself, and found out he was a filmmaker, and then he talked to him about it, and then apparently like a couple days later, like Nick Mondo sent him like a full fucking like movie treatment essentially for this trailer they released, and he was fired up about it. And they rented like a warehouse studio that had a bunch of different sets in it, including the prison. He rented a high quality red camera, which cost him $8,000, and they shot it like a fucking movie. And he loved it, and I just think that's a cool little aside story because, again, you don't think you're to hear about Sick Nick Mondo in 2019, especially making like a cool cutting edge video for someone.
I enjoyed the Sick Nick Mondo name drop. Anybody who played Backyard Wrestling on, I think it's PlayStation 2, he was on the cover of that game, and that's a terrible wrestling game. But yeah, anybody who watched death matches or that CZW stuff, not my cup of tea, but you would still, if you kept up with the independent scene at all, you would know the name of Sick Nick Mondo. So to hear him name dropped in 2019 was pretty cool. We did a podcast, I think like the day after the Moxley video dropped it, and we talked about it, and we discussed like this had to be shot while he was under WWE contract because he literally released it 15 minutes after his contract expired. So you're not shooting this whole video in 15 minutes. And it led to, I said he just told WWE guys, hey, this is what WWE wants, and nobody questioned it because why the fuck would they? It led to speculation of like, oh, look how highly well this is produced. Like, it's a work, obviously, because how else was he going to do this? He's not a filmmaker. He can't do all this. Like, this is WWE money. Like, AEW wouldn't help him shoot this because he was under WWE contract. So how could he talk to them? And it just turns out like, hey, famous people kind of know people who are good at this stuff, and they help them out, and you can do stuff like this. And it takes a lot less money than you may think nowadays when you just have friends like Sick Nick Mondo, apparently. And yeah, he shot the New Japan video, and we thought when we decided we were going to do this podcast today, we thought, well, that's the only thing we're going to have to talk about is Moxley now being in New Japan. And then turns out this interview comes out. We have plenty of Moxley to talk about. He didn't mention like, yeah, I was teasing the AEW appearance or anything like that. He just kind of mentioned that this is how the video came together. And it was a cool story of knowing how all that came together, because there were a lot of questions when that video came out. And he even said like, he was doing a speech at the time, but he hired like a Twitter management team that was like, yeah, we can get it posted right here. Your name will switch over when this happens, and you can just go. And it's like, all right then, like Jon Moxley has a fucking social media team behind him.
I know, and that's crazy for someone who never fucking tweeted when he was in WWE, which is hilarious. So
yeah, he even said it like, I didn't want to tweet dumb shit like storyline, and I didn't want to have to read and interact with fans and stuff, but not in a negative way. But I mean, let's be honest, we're all on Twitter, and fans can be stupid when they tag wrestlers and stuff. And Moxley was just like, but I know that Twitter is important, so now that I'm free from them, I don't have to like do all this kind of quote unquote PR answering to boost my social media profile. I can just post the cool shit that I want to post.
Yeah, so again, the interview is, we're just kind of giving you some highlights. It's well worth your time. It's just over 90 minutes, and it flies by. You'll probably want to hear more when it's over. The only annoying part of it is the constant Omaha Steaks commercials. But other than that, it's a really, really good interview. And again, I think it's important that he comes off as thankful, but he doesn't, and he's never really bitter. He's just explaining all the frustrations that led to him being fed up and walking away. And like as Jeremy mentioned, they gave him a new contract offer, and he never looked at it. He goes, that thing could be. He goes, I never opened it. He goes, I might frame it. He goes, that thing might, it might be a $10 million contract. And he said, he goes, what the hell am I going to do with $10 million? He goes, I have a lot of money. My truck's paid off. My house is paid off. I got a wife. He's like, I have matches lined up. I just didn't imagine needing all their money. And again, that's a powerful thing when you can make that choice to walk away like that. It's one thing to be frustrated. You know, we talk about like your Russos and your Zigglers and stuff like that who always complain that they're frustrated, but they always end up re-signing. So obviously you're not that frustrated if you keep re-signing and taking the money. And that's fine. I'm not judging them for it. It's just, don't sit there and cry all the time that you're not being used and that it's not getting better and that nobody believes in you when you apparently don't believe in yourself enough to leave. There's a thing about betting on yourself at some point, and that's what he did. And yeah, definitely make time to listen to this interview.
It's well worth your time. If you have a long car ride, it doesn't really matter. Like if you're a wrestling fan, then listen to this interview, because it's not only vital. I feel like it's vital information and an inside look as to how WWE is run from a top star. Like let's be honest about this. Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley was a top guy in the company. All right, it's one thing if Ty Dillinger leaves and he's like, oh yeah, I pitched this idea and they didn't take it, and I was very frustrated with everything. Okay, I like Ty Dillinger, but you were always kind of a mid-card act and who probably wasn't going to get past that level, at least not in the immediate future. Dean Ambrose was at the top of the mountain. Like, they promoted this guy's exit. They were very kind to this guy on how he left and everything, and that could have been for any number of reasons, but he was a former world champion. He had top matches at WrestleMania, and this is how they still looked at him when he came in to pitch ideas. And it just goes to show, like, this is how WWE is run. And if a guy like Dean Ambrose can't get the time of day, can't get stuff changed, then how, nobody else really has a chance. Like, if they want to get something changed, they probably don't have a good chance of it happening. And it really sucks to hear that as a wrestling fan, because whether it doesn't matter which company you like we all just want to watch good shit. Nobody, you say it all the time, Larry, like, you don't want to sit through 3 hours of Raw, review the whole show, and it suck. You don't want to complain about the show, because no one wants to waste 3 hours of their Monday night watching something that sucks. I can watch Beverly Hills 90210 reruns. At least it's good. At least I know what I'm watching and what I'm getting into. Like, watching wrestling for 3 hours just sucks. And that's kind of what we're being given. And we know it can be better. And we just all want it to be better. And it probably would be better if wrestlers in WWE just had more creative freedom and they weren't playing to the audience of one.
Yeah, and I also say, too, like, the other thing is, like, when the wrestling is fucking good, man, it is some of the best shit around. And that's the best stuff to talk about, and that's what I love to talk about, because you can only say something sucks in so many different ways till you sound repetitive and you sound like you're beating the fucking drum. And it becomes hard to write reviews of bad shows that are constantly either bad or just lifeless. So, yeah, I just want good stuff. I want WWE to be good. They should be fucking awesome. They have the most stacked roster in the history of the fucking company between the main roster and developmental. You have a bunch of backstage experience that should be really helpful instead of the 27 writers and all that shit. Yeah, I just want it to be good. And if it ends up that, guys like Jericho opting to leave the company before, and then Jon Moxley heading to AEW and leaving the company, if it takes shit like that and a new company to spurn up and light a fire under Vince's ass again to motivate him, good. And again, this isn't a big their competition thing. They haven't even gotten to TV yet. We don't know if they can draw weekly crowds. We don't know if they can maintain a rating. We don't know if they can tell episodic storylines on TV. They can do it on Being the Elite. They can sell out big shows in 4 minutes. Those are all great things, but they're not proven on TV yet. But if they get there and they kick ass and it motivates Vince and Raw gets better and SmackDown gets better, that's great for fucking all of us. And I'm excited for that if it happens.
I I sincerely hope that it does happen. And yeah, if it takes Ambrose and Jericho leaving and bringing a lot of this stuff was known. Like we knew whenever we criticize WWE, it largely just falls to it's never the performers unless their match just sucks, and then in which case they may have just had a bad performance. If they do a bad promo, sometimes like if all right, this was a bad promo because they stumbled all over their words and didn't have any believability and whatever, or this was a bad promo because the verbiage was just god awful and the setup was awful, and then you criticize the writers for it. But and then everybody defends the writers of like, it's really hard to write this TV show. And I fully believe it is really fucking hard because you have someone like Road Dogg, who was the lead writer of SmackDown, and he was just frustrated because no matter what he did, he would take it to Vince and Vince would just change the shit out of it. And like, this is all stuff we knew through reports and reliable reporting. But now you have, again, a former world champion saying this is how the process works. And I hope something changes out of this. I don't know if it will. Vince will probably send Ambrose, or they'll probably fire Renee on their wedding anniversary or something. I don't know. Vince is fucking weird with this stuff. But I hope something changes. And if it doesn't, I hope AEW succeeds. I hope all wrestling succeeds, because the more it succeeds, the more we have to watch and cover, the more clicks we get, and hopefully the more money we make too.
Fuck yeah. So keeping up with
Listen, I'm not being offered $500,000 contracts. If I gotta write for these clicks, I want people to be clicking it so I can make an extra $2-3.
Yeah, we're not making that sweet Saudi money either, dude.
That's right. We're not making AEW or sweet Saudi money.
So, but sticking with Moxley, it has been revealed that Jon Moxley is in fact the fucking New Japan Pro Wrestling knife pervert. He will debut for the company at the Best of Super Junior Finals, facing off against young Juice Robinson for the IWGP US title. And they announced it at a press conference yesterday, I believe. And Juice was all fucking fired up, cutting great babyface promo, talking about how him and Moxley were in developmental at the same time. And, Mox used to call me up and we used to go to the bar and drink and talk about being successes in wrestling. And he's like, I was kind of a young kid that looked up to him because he had more experience. And he's, and everybody's asking me, what's Jon Moxley going to do to you? And he's like, well, I'm not CJ Parker anymore, motherfuckers. Maybe you should ask what Juice Robinson's going to do to him. And I was like, fuck yes, I love Juice. He's awesome. But Jon Moxley, New Japan Pro Wrestling knife pervert. Jeremy, your thoughts?
This reveal was another, like, he just posted it on Twitter. He just put it out there. He like broke the internet. I think it was on Sunday night, because they released that backstage promo that he did at Double or Nothing, which was fantastic. And then like 5 minutes later, he released that he was the knife pervert. And what a job he did keeping this, and like really everybody keeping this under wraps, because like nobody was looking Moxley's direction. The flag, the Union Jack flag, really threw everybody off, and that was I don't know whose idea that was, but whoever's idea that was a really good call, because that put everybody in the way of Chris Brooks and then Mark Haskins, and basically everyone was looking in the way of, oh, they're gonna get somebody from like Rev Pro or something like that and bring them over full time. And no, it's Jon fucking Moxley. And I think it helped that the target was Juice Robinson. No offense to Juice, but if you're booking like Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, his big come into New Japan, Juice Robinson's not exactly the first name on that list that you're thinking of. Yeah, like, I mean, Jericho went right after Omega, like that's who he was going after, and Omega had been challenging for the title and everything. Like, Omega was a top guy in the company, and that's who Jericho goes after. Then he goes after Naito, and then feuds with LIJ, and now he's going after Okada. Like, that's that's kind of the level you would expect for a Jon Moxley as well. And it's like, no, it's Juice Robinson, which is cool because Juice is great, and the press conference was great, and he makes sense on the whole for a first opponent. But that also, I think, was able to throw the sense off of Moxley. And it's another video where these videos started playing on New Japan at the events like May 2nd or something. So 2 days after his contract expired, and they were shot while he was under WWE contract. So I'm sure he knew he was going to AEW. Like, he probably talked with them right when his contract was up, but he obviously talked to New Japan like right when his contract was up, because these videos were playing 2 days later and they had this all in their heads, unless it really was, we don't have an idea, we'll figure it out, and then they stumbled upon Moxley. But I doubt that was the case. It was probably he was talking to them immediately. He had this idea of, hey, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to be presented, and they were like, yeah, sure. And like, he sent these videos over to him, and they were playing on their events a day or 2 or 3 after his WWE contract expired.
Yeah, I think it was whoever came up with the Union Jack stuff. It was if he was the plan from the beginning, it was a great thing to throw everybody off. Because, yeah, it started with Chris Brooks speculation. Then there was people like me who was like, there was rumors that David Finlay's injury wasn't as bad as first thought, and it could be him coming back. And then it switched to Mark Haskins. And, yeah, it's like nobody ever thought it was Moxley. And if you say you thought it was him, you're fucking full of shit. Because nobody was even speculating about it. So, yeah.
And then when he came out of Double or Nothing, I mean, we did the podcast right after, and we didn't think like, okay, he's in AEW now, cool. Like, and we talked about the Knife Pervert videos, and we still weren't thinking Jon Moxley. Like, even after we knew he was in AEW, we weren't thinking, oh, he's also going to appear in New Japan.
Yeah. So yeah, great job by everybody involved there, and yeah, it's really cool, and it's very smart of him that he was able to make a deal independent of AEW to where he could work New Japan dates like Jericho and Omega was previously reported as having the same kind of thing. And it's good for New Japan, it's good for Moxley, it's good for AEW to get him out there. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what he's gonna bring in the ring, because there were times where I thought he was a ton of fun. And then there were times where it felt like he was walking through the motions, and he probably was because of how fucking just depressed he was with the whole situation there. And I can't blame him for that now that you know all this stuff, So
and
he looked fired up. He looked fired up at Double or Nothing with that run-in. And his promo afterwards, like you said, was great. So, I mean, I have pretty high hopes for his debut here.
Yeah, and this is going to be his first match, like post WWE. This Juice Robinson match. He has indie dates booked. He's gonna face Darby Allin and Pentagon Jr., and then he's gonna wrestle at Fyter Fest, but against Janela, which will probably be awesome. I hope a video game console gets broken on somebody in that match. Multiple video game consoles would be fine by me. This is his first post WWE match, and he's wrestling maybe a guy that he's not like too familiar with in the ring. I don't know how many matches Moxley and CJ Parker / Juice Robinson had in NXT, if any, and if they did, that was who knows how long ago. But he's wrestling a guy who there's no like big learning curve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going in there against an Okada or Tanahashi or somebody like that, where, all right, you got to kind of get on the same page. Language barrier wise, you got to kind of figure out their style. Like, Juice still, he can wrestle that WWE sort of style. And that's probably a good thing for Moxley. And I'm very interested in this match, not just because like the videos have been great, the hype has been great, but just the intrigue surrounding it of, are we going to get a different kind of Jon Moxley? Like, was he going through the motions at the end? He probably was. I've never been super high on Dean Ambrose as a worker. He's had some good matches, but I can't name you like too many great singles matches that stand out. The Triple H match, prior to WrestleMania, Roadblock, whichever end of
He
the
had,
line,
he had a
whichever
really
one.
great WWE title match against Styles at one point too. But yeah, I know
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
mean.
That was the other match I was going to mention is the match with Styles. And again, that's AJ Styles. Anybody can have a great match with him. And the Triple H match was probably better. I mean, shit, it might be the best Triple H singles match in God knows how long because all his other matches are WrestleMania snoozers. And the story of Ambrose, potentially winning the title certainly helped the drama in that match. But overall, there's not too many like great Dean Ambrose matches that stick out when it comes to one-on-one matches. So we're going to see, if he's kind of uncuffed here and how I'm sure he's motivated, but how well he's going to do without kind of those WWE shackles on him. And I hope it turns out well for him. I hope him and Juice just go out there and have a banger and, the rise of Moxley on the independents leading into AEW Weekly in the fall begins.
And then the other big question is he winning the title, and is this going to lead to more speculation of New Japan possibly shifting to working with AEW? Because there's still constant rumblings about that.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to preview the show next week at some point, but that's a big thing for me as well because it would feel weird if he comes over and in his first big post-WWE match, he's losing to Juice Robinson. And I don't think Ambrose is the type of guy who cares too much about wins and losses. Like, he just wants to be creatively satisfied, and maybe there's a creative direction. And, like, yeah, he seems like maybe he's friends with Juice, and if he's not sticking around New Japan, the right thing to do would be, hey, let me give Juice like this big kind of rub right now. But again, it's weird if, hey, this guy, fresh off this run, fresh off this AEW run, and fresh off everything, just lost to Juice Robinson. So how do you, does he win the title? What kind of finish do they do? Like the booking really intrigues me as well. And you talked about it, the New Japan. I feel like as soon as they can, they're cut bait with Ring of Honor. There's just, you're not getting anyone from Ring of Honor that you can't replace through AEW and in working with them. Like, I know Ring of Honor has given them.
I was going to say there's one exception, Jeff Cobb.
Yeah, Jeff Cobb.
But that's
is
about
a big one. But Jeff Cobb has openly stated like he only signed with Ring of Honor to be with New Japan.
Exactly.
And if I don't know when his ROH deal is up. Like, I feel like he just signed it. I think he would cut out of Ring of Honor as soon as possible to just work with New Japan full time. But still, all right, Jeff Cobb. Again, you can get some Super Juniors. Like they use the Ring of Honor guys for Best of Super Juniors. You can get some of these guys from AEW as well. Like, you get Omega back. You can get Cody. You get the Bucks back. You get Moxley now. MJF probably wouldn't work in Japan, but if they want to get that guy jumped in Japan, then sure, you can get Adam Page back. Like, Hangman's going to be a big star in All Elite, so you get him back as well. There's replaceable talent that you can get from AEW that Ring of Honor is currently supplying you.
By the way, speaking of Ring of Honor stupidity, you believe those fuckers don't have Gresham under a contract? Jesus Christ.
I totally believe it. Independent contracts are super weird. Like, Impact didn't have Jordan Grace under contract, and maybe it just runs in that relationship there. It's like we just kind of forgot about you guys. MLW does the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we signed this guy to a contract, and then you find out, oh, this guy actually signed with this promotion to a contract. It's like, okay, what do those MLW contracts actually mean? I don't know how these things work with the contract language. I truthfully cannot believe they didn't have Gresham under some type of deal. And the fact that they didn't is just, and that's how it is in the independents. Like, WWE and AEW, I trust their contracts are pretty ironclad, and if you sign them, you're not going anywhere unless there's provisions in there. These other companies, if you say you sign it like Impact and ROH and MLW and any other independent, if there's, hey, I signed a deal with this company, I totally believe that means you can work anywhere else. And if WWE or AEW come along and offer you an actual contract, you're allowed to break whatever you have with ROH or Impact or any of these other smaller companies and sign with the two bigger companies.
Yeah, who the hell knows? But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out here going forward. But Moxley in New Japan, it's new, it's fresh, and we will stick with New Japan. And we're going to go back and cover some Best of Super Juniors, Jeremy. Got to keep caught up on Best of Super Juniors. Go back to night 10. And this is our last 10-match card of all tournament matches. Dragon Lee defeated Taka due to injury forfeit because Taka suffered a leg injury and is unfortunately off the rest of the tour, which sucks because he was having a fun little veteran run there. And just kind of a disappointment for him that he ended up injured.
Yeah, Taka was having a good run, and he wasn't gonna win maybe any matches, but that wasn't stopping him from putting on some quality short matches. And so the fact that he's out now, these guys just get buys and get the night off, which I'm sure they appreciate. So anybody who lucked out and got Taka late, probably thankful that they're getting a night off.
That's right. So first match of the evening then was Taguchi defeating Ren Narita, just over 7 minutes. Another good little match with Ren Narita, a little more ground-based than his other matches, but it was fun and I enjoyed it, and Ren Narita continues having good matches.
The wrong guy won. Once again, Ren Narita should be undefeated.
I know you love your Ren Narita. He just needs better hair, man.
He's gonna win this tournament next year.
He needs just that Shota Umino Tanahashi like hair, and he'll be set to go.
That's the problem. New Japan is all about the hair game.
Well, you know what? Ren Narita just needs to step it up. The grappling game is good. The in-ring game is good. The hair game is where he's losing it. So
fair enough. It needs to land a Japanese shampoo commercial.
That's
like
right.
Edge.
Call up Brother Edge. So yeah, next up, Jonathan Gresham defeated Kanemaru, just under 8 minutes via submission. Good and fun little match. Gresham completely out-wrestling him, while Kanemaru was looking to out-sleaze him like he did with Sho and Ishimori in previous matches. But good win for Gresham, though, who is having a good and consistent tournament.
Yeah, New Japan should sign Gresham. I don't think he'd actually move to Japan to work with them full-time, but they should just come in and be like, hey, we're signing this guy. Y'all want him? You can pay us for him.
Yeah, I'd love it because he's awesome. Plus, again, he's not your average junior where he's total flash and everything. He brings a varied game, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's Zack Sabre-ish, where it's just very tough to have a bad match with this guy, with a technical wrestler that is as smooth as he is. And he's not quite as good as Zack Sabre Jr., but he's just in that similar cloth where his style can adapt to any other style, and as long as he is on his game and fluid, it's going to be tough to have a bad match with this guy.
He's Black Sabre Jr. He actually
very nice. I like that.
I think it was ACH that actually in an Evolve show he put on Zack Sabre's ring jacket and he tweeted out, he goes, "Look everyone, Black Sabre Jr." And of course, someone right away accused him of being racist. It's like, what the fuck? That's funny.
Oh, that's dumb. So stupid.
Yeah.
But
I laughed.
I like that as a nickname for Jonathan Gresham. Yeah,
Gresham's great though. It's like I said, because he can mix it up. His grappling game is obviously super strong, and yet he can still pop out your moonsault presses, shooting stars, and stuff from time to time. So yeah, he works well with just a wide variety of opponents. I would not complain with him being in New Japan more at all. Next up, your man Rocky Romero defeated Dookie at 10.5 minutes via submission. And like you mentioned previously, now that they've kind of dropped all the backstory stuff and really kind of stopped trying with Dookie and just let him go out there and have matches.
Kevin Kelly is almost outright burying this man on commentary.
I know. It's great. But yeah, no, this was good too. Rocky's been really good all tournament long and just working smart matches with good layouts, and the crowd loves them. And what more can you ask for?
Yeah, Doki, once they got rid of trying to push this guy as a serious threat, he looks a lot more comfortable. And I'm not saying I want him to stick around past this tournament, but if he gets a look with Taichi or something, I mean, they need tag teams, whatever. Book Taichi and Doki as a tag team to get the never open weight title off of Taichi, have Ishii kill him and be done with that whole nonsense. Like that's fine. I'm not opposed to that. He's certainly turned the corner from where he was in night one. And I'm not saying he's good, but he's at least passable.
Yeah. I think he has a chance of sticking around because, Desperado is out with the broken jaw, and with Taka recently getting banged up, it's not like he was working a ton anyway. So I think he'll more be the manager and hype man for Zack Sabre when he was around. And yeah, I could definitely see Doki sticking around a little more. Maybe not like super long, but at least until Desperado comes back.
They got to pay off something with the claw with Taichi as well.
Yeah, he needs to use the Iron Fingers at some point, so we'll see. Next up, Marty Scurll defeated Teton 10.5 minutes via submission. Very good stuff. I thought they played the Clash of Styles well. The work was clean and good drama leading up until the Marty Scurll win. Marty having a good tournament.
Scurll's having a good tournament. I've been high on Teton this entire tournament, and he continues to just do his thing. So that's another guy where I hope he comes back, and I hope he gets a look from one of the top promotions in the United States. I don't know whose radar he's on. Obviously he'll have, I think ROH will probably have kind of first rights to him, but if somebody else can, then I'm sure you can get out of whatever the hell you're on right now. I wouldn't be mad if like AEW picked him up or something, because he's looked good in this tournament.
Yeah, he's been a lot of fun. He's been pretty consistent overall, and I like him. Next up, Bushi defeated Bandito at 8.5 minutes via pin. Again, good match with a really fun closing stretch. Bushi picking up another win as he started putting wins together. Just a lot of fun, and after a kind of slow start, Bandito's ramped things up a little more and is looking a little more like himself, and yeah, just good overall.
Bandito certainly turning a corner after the Ospreay match. That seemed to really get him into this tournament, and he's still not winning anything, but I don't know what happened that this was the match that sort of flipped the script for him. Outside of he got to wrestle Will Ospreay and it was a great match. He just seems a lot more lively now, and that's great. We know whatever it takes to wake this guy up because we know what he's capable of.
Yep.
And yeah, this was another good match.
Shingo defeated Tiger Mask 9.5 minutes via pin. Again, another good match. Veteran Tiger Mask giving it his all, working a smart veteran game. Took the fight to Shingo maybe a little more than some might have thought, but ultimately it was all for nothing. He failed to beat Shingo, who remained undefeated.
This was exactly what it needed to be. Maybe a tad too long, but at the same time, I understand that because with New Japan and with a tournament like this, you can tell that story of, hey, Shingo's had a lot of matches. He's had some tough matches. He's a little banged up and everything. Tiger Mask, he is a veteran. He knows the kind of tricks of the trade here, so he can last a little bit longer than you would expect with Shingo at this point. Like if you do this match night 2, Shingo should just run through him, but you're doing this match night 11, and it's like, all right, you can give Tiger Mask a little bit more on this night. Exactly,
and it even though Tiger Mask loses again, it still keeps him a little bit of credibility because he did take the fight to Shingo, who has been, while he's had some competitive matches, he's largely this steamrolling fuckers at the end of the day. So next up, Yo defeated El Phantasmo, giving El Phantasmo his second loss. El Phantasmo falls to 0-2 against the boys from Roppongi, and I thought it was pretty good, but it felt a little flat to me. It just 12 minutes 45 seconds. It wasn't that it was long, didn't feel overly long, but it also just didn't have that like real like strong sense of urgency, and obviously didn't have the drama of the Rocky Romero match.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. Phantasmo has been, I don't want to say hit and miss in this tournament because he's had some really good matches, but he's had those really good matches against, in those main event spots where his kind of undercard matches have been a little more disappointing than you would hope for given the spot he's in. And I think that's sort of another instance here is it was just kind of maybe more disappointing than you would hope given the spot that they put him in. The big thing here was that Phantasmo lost, and it's like, all right, this guy beat Ospreay. This guy is gonna run away with this block, and then he loses to Romero, and it's like, okay, that was a main event. Rocky was kind of due that win, but then he loses to Yo. It's like, all right, where is this going with Phantasmo? And we would kind of see how this shake out at the top of the bracket in the next match. But I think the result kind of added to this match because I don't think a lot of people thought Yo was going to win, and so when he pulled it off, it certainly was a shocking result, and maybe that kind of caught people off surprise. But to me, like it enhanced the match.
Fair enough. Next up, Robbie Eagles defeated Will Ospreay 28 minutes via submission. And as you mentioned, the story with Phantasmo kind of played out here because he came out to support fellow Bullet Club member Robbie Eagles, which led to him getting involved in the match after a ref bump. Hit Ospreay with a chair shot. And this also continued the babyface teases of Robbie Eagles because he was not happy with his Bullet Club teammate for getting involved in his business. Eagles ended up hitting the 450 on the knee and tapped out Ospreay to the Ron Miller special as they teased the draw. And I thought it was a great match, good story. Maybe a little too much overbooking at the end, but it's like one of those Mills Lane, I'll allow it type deals because I like the Eagles tease of a babyface turn, and the Phantasmo interference at least made sense in terms of he needed Ospreay to lose as well, so that he, even if they're equal in record, he has the tiebreaker. So at least it totally played into the story effectively.
That's why with the overbooking at the end. First off, it's Will Ospreay, so it was a great match. And Robbie Eagles has had a really strong tournament, and by all accounts, like they're high on Robbie Eagles because apparently he's bringing in some good traffic from the UK and whatnot. So credit to Robbie Eagles. Like he seems to be doing his job in this Best Super Juniors tournament, like bringing new eyeballs and having good matches. Good job of doing your job. I didn't have a problem with the overbooking because of what you mentioned is Phantasmo had lost. So he needed Ospreay to lose so Ospreay didn't, he wasn't 2 points up on him. And it made sense. He was facing a Bullet Club guy. So even if he wasn't facing a Bullet Club guy, it would make sense that Phantasmo would want Will Ospreay to lose this match. The fact, I understand the turn with Robbie Eagles, the babyface tease, and who knows if it'll happen or not. It seems like it should because you've already got Ishimori, you've got Phantasmo, now Eagles. Like you don't need that many juniors, I don't feel like. So Eagles going off on his own or joining another group makes more sense. This felt like the wrong spot for the tease almost because Eagles needed the help. Because with this win, now he's tied with those three as well. And maybe Eagles is like, okay, I could have beat him on my own and everything. But if you're Bullet Club, it should be, yeah, thanks for helping me out. Like we need to win this tournament. And again, I understand they're doing the tease. And so maybe this is why it worked for a lot of people. But this is why I'm also going to call it out because it kind of shows that Bullet Club, at least Robbie Eagles being in Bullet Club, maybe it's the wrong faction for him because otherwise he should have been more accepting of this help. And oh yeah, it's not. It probably enhances the turn even more. But if they don't like pull the trigger on the turn, or if it's just kind of a subtle tease and then it doesn't go anywhere, and I trust that it will go somewhere in New Japan. I don't know, just a devil's advocate type thing, I guess, more than anything, because I didn't have a now that I've talked about it, I'm talking myself into why it's even better. But if someone wants to use this and say this is why it was bad, there's a devil's advocate point there.
Yeah, they've been lightly teasing the Eagle stuff all tournament long, which is why I liked it a lot, because he's been more sporting, obviously, than Phantasmo, and not resorting to the bullshit and all that. So, I think it played off well. And again, like I said, not a huge fan of the overbooking to a point, but again, it made sense, and that's why I thought it was okay. Because it didn't take away from the match, number one, and number two, it made sense. And when it makes sense and doesn't hurt the match, it's not usually a big problem. It's when you get into those just clusterfuck finishes where you're having a great match and then the crowd kind of groans when it happens. It pisses me off. So that didn't happen here. So main event, Taiji Ishimori defeated Sho, 20.5 minutes. Very good main event. A lot of good work encounters. Lacked a little bit of drama and crowd investment, which wasn't totally their fault. The crowd was a bit hit and miss all night. But Ishimori stays on the heels of Shingo. And basically the whole thing is going to be down to Shingo and Ishimori on the final night when they meet. Because even if Shingo is undefeated going into that, if Ishimori wins the head-to-head and they have equal records, he wins. So that's the story they're telling there. But very good main event. Sho again delivering. Ishimori looked better. He had been a little roughed up with injury problems with his neck, but looked good here.
Yeah, he looked better than he had for the past couple of nights, and he hadn't really been working too long of matches the past few nights, so it was tough to judge just how he would do in a longer match. Whereas Sho's brought it all tournament. They're clearly bringing this guy along. He's not pulling off wins, but he keeps hanging with the top guys, and so that counts for something. Ishimori, he definitely looked better. Still not quite like Ishimori level that we've expected from him. The drama was sort of taken out of this match because if Ishimori loses at this point, there's no one that's catching Shingo, and you can't have that going into the final couple of nights here. So it seemed fairly obvious that Ishimori was going to end up winning this match, and they've done a good job with Sho, but it's also showing that he is still a step behind kind of these former champions in main event guys.
Exactly. Move on to night 11 now. And we started things off with another medical forfeit of Taka. So Marty Scurll moves on with 2 more points and climbs the rankings a little bit, which is good for Marty's tournament. And we'll get the points breakdown at the end of this night. And then first match, Sho defeated Teton 11-15 via pin. Good and competitive babyface match. Again, both guys having good tournaments. Everything Sho's done has been good. Teton, again, being really consistent. Fun match.
Sho certainly needed the win. Teton, another, performance. There's nothing wrong.
Exactly. Next up, Taiji Ishimori defeated Tiger Mask 4 minutes 38 seconds via submission. Short and solid, Ishimori getting a much-needed quick victory due to his injury issues, and won with the submission using the LeBell lock, or the S-lock. So, again, they're trying to sell an alternate finish for him, which I always appreciate.
This was kind of building off my points from the Sho match. He's still clear up because he's still working these shorter matches with guys who usually, if you have a healthy Ishimori, this match is probably 10 minutes. But because he's not very healthy, go 10 minutes with Tiger Mask when you're banged up and you need to rest up for that final night against Shingo. So that was why the Sho match probably could have been better if Ishimori was at 100%, but this shows that even with the shorter matches, he's still not quite 100%. But credit to the guy for gutting it out and then putting on that main event match with Show.
Yeah, he's definitely working hard and trying his best, man. Yeah, he is definitely banged up. Next up, I felt really bad. Shingo defeated Jonathan Gresham 11-15 via pin. Very good match. Gresham was working a very smart game plan that allowed him to get believable offense in on Shingo and look very competitive. But again, at the end of the day, nobody is in Shingo's league right now. He overcame all of Gresham's submission shenanigans, all of his counter work, and then hit Noshigami, pumping bomber, and eventually finished him with the Last of the Dragon. And yeah, just very good stuff. Shingo again kicking asses, having very good to great matches. Gresham again delivering, and yes, bring him back more in New Japan.
Sign him to a full-time deal. Gresham got in some good offense on Shingo. It was a different style than Shingo has kind of seen throughout this tournament, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, Shingo should win, but Gresham once again looked good here. Gresham and Show and Teton have, I mean, Show they're obviously going to push, but I think I said this last podcast, like Gresham and Teton have been kind of two standout guys where if you never heard of them before, even in losses, like they're putting on strong performances.
And the main event was Dragon Lee defeating Kanemaru at 14 minutes via pin. Wasn't like my favorite style match, and it really didn't feel like a main event match, but it was what it was. As Kanemaru using his Suzuki Gun heel tactics gave us a little bit of drama leading to the Lee win. It was good, it just wasn't anything you need to go out of your way to see.
Yeah, not great for a main event. I didn't think it was anything bad. I told you, like, Kanemaru doesn't do a whole lot for me, so I put this more on him than Dragon Lee because we know how good Dragon Lee is. I don't care anything for Kanemaru. He's not my cup of tea, and the match wasn't like overly long or anything, so it's not that surprising that it wasn't like some classic match at 14 minutes, but it probably could have been a little bit better.
Fair enough. So the standings as we look at it, Shingo 8-0 with 16 points, Taiji Ishimori 7-1 with 14 points, still in the mix. They're the only two in the mix. Right below them, and of course Skype is going to be a bitch right now, so we will wait a minute. I will vamp for time. Right below them is Dragon Lee with 12 points.
I got it.
Okay, good. Marty Scurll has 10 points. Show has 8 points. Jonathan Gresham has 8 points. Tiger Mask has 4 points. Teton has 4 points. Kanemaru has 4 points. And Taka, bringing up the rear, he will finish with no points due to the injury. So that is where Block A stands, and we have another night of B Block coming up, and we'll be starting to finish things up. And we'll have the finals on June 5th with, Jay White and Tanahashi, the finals of the Super Juniors, as well as Mox versus Juice Robinson, all confirmed for that show. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the 411 on Wrestling podcast. We appreciate your time. Remember, you can follow the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, and of course, the 411mania.com website. If you have time, please subscribe and share to the show. And if you also have time, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. For Jeremy, I am Larry Csonka. Thank you again for listening. Happy wrestling, everybody, and have a good weekend.